Have a very special moment of our Sustainability Day. And yes, this is a very special moment of our Sustainability Day because now we discuss the future of the grid. Is the infrastructure green enough, sustainable enough? How does it comply with the needs of the transition? We discussed this with Valerio Battista, CEO of Prysmian Group. Welcome, Valerio Battista.
Thank you very much.
And Francesco Starace, CEO of Enel.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Welcome, everyone, and thanks for your time. We are delighted to have you both to discuss this. This is very relevant. Now, first of all, I would like to start with the CEO of Enel to understand how do you see the future of the grid, the importance of the network, and what are your priorities and your plans for the future, Starace?
It's a great question, and it is not asked often enough in the debate. The debate is always about generation, renewables. Of course, they're important, but they can never really complete their job unless networks are really completely changed, overhauled, and unless a large investment is focused on networks. They are, I would say, as important to this transition as optical networks are to the functioning of the web. So we cannot think of a fully decarbonized world if we don't completely change, reinforce, and digitize our networks. The investment here are very large, and by the way, they should be implemented early enough in the curve. The experience we have is that if regulators and investors don't really understand this, way before the renewable energy invasion, if you want to use this word, occurs, then things slow down and become really difficult. So networks, why are they so important? Because renewables and in general a decarbonized network requires multiple access points, many more. We're talking about 2-3 orders of magnitude when compared to the input nodes, so the generation input nodes. Instead of hundreds, we're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of generating power stations around an electricity-driven system, on one hand. On the other hand, technology enables consumers to do things like becoming consumers and producers, but also using their load flexibility to balance out network services. And that requires a digitized distribution system to cope with these new scenarios. And the big investment needs are reflected in, for example, our plans. We have a roughly 200 billion investment cycle between during this decade until 2030, and out of those, about 45% are dedicated to networks. So it's a huge part of that investment. And one can say, why do you do that? Because at the end, you have already the networks. The networks are not just the wires, but they are all the connecting nodes. They are all the substations. They are all the meters at the end of homes of the Italians. And they are indeed becoming more and more other things like points of charging of cars and things like that. So the incredible impact of this transition on networks cannot be underestimated. And it is indeed a very large value creation potential and improvement in resilience and in quality of service for a more electrified world, in the one in which we live. And it's great that, Prysmian and companies like Prysmian are there, because we need innovation everywhere, not just in computers in the networks, but also in the cabling systems that connect them. And there's so much to be done around this that, we have our hands full.
Yeah, well, Francesco Starace, thank you for this. And you introduced what sounds like a radical shift in the idea, the concept of the role of the grid and the network looking at the future. Valerio Battista, let me ask you, what is the commitment of Prysmian in supporting utilities and developers that are coping with the transition towards renewable energy?
While grid infrastructure are key to the transition towards renewable energy sources and achieving Europe's energy autonomy, cable and system technology for power transmission and distribution undoubtedly confirms its strategic role in making renewable energies available on a larger scale, an efficient, effective and sustainable way. In short, our sector is becoming more and more technologically complex and capital intensive too. In order to meet the rapidly evolving needs of the market, we, as cable makers, are required to push technology innovation ahead, to increase investment in production capacity and installation assets, and to develop further knowledge and competencies. We at the Prysmian Group are demonstrating to be capable of supporting market developments, being close to our customers that are at the forefront of the energy transition. Our group CapEx plan has been increased to 350 million euro per year in the next 3 years. That's for a total of over 1 billion euro, of which the major portion is allocated on businesses more exposed to energy transition and digitalization. With over 100 production sites in 50 countries, our production footprint and supply chain allow us to get closer to both our global and local customers, wherever they are. We have partnership and customers' intimacy with global customers, such as Enel, both at the quarter level and in the region. Where they operate, we understand and anticipate their needs. This allows us to align our resources and investment to grow together. As the #1 cable producer globally, we have the ability to partner with key raw material suppliers to secure production and also to co-develop raw material products that are key to the future of the energy transition.
Now, Francesco Starace, we know that also leader company as Enel are engaged in improving sustainability throughout the supply chain. What's the relation with your supplier? How do you engage? Do you have any specific plan in this direction?
I have to be careful to answer that question because we have a major supplier here sitting together.
Yeah, sure.
But let's say that during 2020, between 2020 and 2019, we were surprised, and we understood that the Scope 1 emissions were becoming smaller than the Scope 3 emissions in our total emission calculation, which was a big surprise. You know, big utilities like Enel typically have a very large Scope 1. We emit CO2 as we produce electricity, and that's been for ages our main focus. So when we did the calculation the first time, we found out that this was no more the case, that Scope 3 was already the largest portion of our scope emissions. On one side, we were happy that we were effectively curbing Scope 1. On the other one, we started to get worried because honestly, Scope 3 is much more difficult than Scope 1. That means that Scope 1 for us means just shift out of thermal generation into renewables. It requires a lot of money, it requires a lot of work, but it's basically something we can manage about ourselves, and we became pretty good at that. Scope 3 is something that has to do with customers and it has to do with suppliers. It's something that you can manage, but you have to manage with everybody else, not just alone. So take customers, for us, it's relatively easy. Once we only sell them renewable energy, we basically can say also the Scope 3 related to customers is fixed. We just have to stop supplying gas and convince them to shift out of gas into electricity. And that's what we try to do with NLX. Suppliers is a completely different story. So the attempt here is to start with the, of course, bulk of the largest suppliers, the one that also on their turn, like Prysmian and others, have their own ESG profile, and they are also going through the same journey with us, and tell them, look, we need to put down some dates, we need to put down a gradual decalage of the emissions, but we need to work at that together. So let's plan ahead some deadlines. Let's plan ahead a certain percentage of gradual reduction of CO2 footprint, and let's see how we can help you in this. Please understand that this is something we need to have by then, by the agreed time frame, if you want to remain with us in our supplier base, which is clearly something that needs to be analyzed case by case, or say sector by sector, because basically it's a sectoral difference that drives this. What we found is that this is not only an issue of say, shifting from one energy source to the other. In many cases, it's also an issue of changing some production patterns, and also an issue of becoming more circular in the production pattern themselves. And we are very happy, for example, to see that Prysmian is very active on this front. And on top of that, we opened this initiative to other distribution companies and other players like us. So we launched what we called an Open Power Grids initiative that puts together not just our grid, which is very large, but also the grids of other players like us, in order for all the suppliers to face more or less the same requirements from different companies, in order for this to become a little easier, and also to have some critical mass. And I think this is a good idea. It should be open to all the industry, in order for the industry to move together and more effectively in that direction. There are many things I could say. You know, we started issuing some tools like the material passport in a way that a methodology that allows our suppliers to track their own supply chains, and in turn make this effort easier and more transparent to everyone. The supplier development program that we have initiated is trying also to do the same, not with the very large suppliers, but with the thousands and thousands of small, medium enterprises that want to do the same need to do the same pattern, but clearly do not have the structures or the strength or the attention that would make it possible for them. So we are trying to use our know-how and help them find the right solutions with the minimum effort. In a way, this is a big program. I think it will take between now and 2040 to go to full results. I have to say one thing that might sound a little bit extreme. For this phase, we are asking our supplier to look at a target of 0 emissions, not net 0. 0 means that you really have to innovate, and you really have to push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone if you want to find a solution. Because the experience that we had on ourselves is that the moment you start to put the net word in front of 0, 80% of the creativity and 90% of the innovation goes away, because you can always, you have a netting solution, so you don't need to worry about everything else. So we try to do that. We got this experience on ourselves, so we're trying to help them, saying, look, for the time being, work at 0. Try to get to this asymptotical 0. In some cases you will, in some others you will not, but if you don't try with the 0 attempt, you will never get it. So this is a little bit extreme, I understand, but believe me, it works, at least in the first phases.
Well, That's very interesting and very demanding, very challenging, but opening a new vision also in the relation with your suppliers. And my opinion is that it will depend also a lot on the ability to have technological innovation, research and development. And so, Valerio Battista, how relevant is it for Prysmian Group, for you, and how key is research and development and innovation?
We consider innovation and sustainability as two strictly linked factors. Prysmian is the only industry player that can boast innovation strengths in both energy and telecom, making us the best partner to develop smart and modern grids and telecom networks. The challenges we will be facing in the next 3 decades is creating a decarbonized modern grid, and are making the existing grid more resilient to increasing climate events. Number 2, enabling the integration of widespread renewables, and third chapter, creating multi-way power flows to enable global power markets. Power transmission focus is on transportation of more power with lower losses over long distances, land and sea, and at high depths for the sea, of course. Our breakthrough technologies, such the 525 kilovolt HVDC, high-depth synthetic armor, and E3X are vital to our customers for them to achieve this goal. That's what we think. Power distribution focus is on increasing reliability and resilience, as 90% of grid failures are in reality here. A sustainable supply chain, increased monitoring, the introduction of automation and digitalization to get real-time informations are key for accurate end-user communication. Our differentiated products like P-Laser medium voltage, Ela Speed, the Precam family, Alisea to control the reels, and the Precam ID offer more sustainable and digital upgrades than the traditional solution used in the past decades.
Now, Valerio Battista, having said that, also Francesco Stracci introduced what they're expecting from their suppliers. And can you tell us what are the commitments of Prysmian to improve the sustainability of its operation, its plans, the way you do things, and also the organization, the way you work together?
Well, while we are fully committed to pushing sustainable innovation to support both the energy transition and the electrification, also in order to be credible with our customer and the stakeholders, we keep high attention in making our operation and organization more sustainable on this regard. We recently launched the 2 very important initiatives that represent for sure a best practice in our sector: the climate change ambition and the social ambition. Prysmian committed to a reduction of the CO2 emission of 46%, minus 46% by 2030, and to achieve net zero operations by 2035. For doing it, we pledged 100 million in investments to achieve this vision. To be in line with this target, Prysmian is heavily investing in energy efficiency measures, installing renewable energy sources in our factories. The group is also focusing on procuring low-carbon electricity and minimize any gas leak from our operations. The company already invested almost 20 million, and 12 more million are planned to be invested for the current year. And we are already seeing the benefits of these investments. We are also focusing on circularity, putting effort in reducing any waste and giving new life to it. we are engaging suppliers and customers in order to develop joint solutions for reducing emission and waste and improve recyclability. Talking about people, culture, and organization, we can only implement our ESG identity, investing in human capitals and in the local communities. We picked up the pace on our commitment to social ambition in 2021, and we set ourselves precise targets to improve diversity, equality, and inclusion.
All right, Valerio Battista, we'll have more on that from your colleagues just in a few moments, but now we have to leave it there. So thanks again to Francesco Starace, CEO of Enel. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. Hope to see you soon. And also to Valerio Battista. Bye-bye, Valerio Battista.
Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Bye-bye. Ciao, Valerio.